In 1963, an ordinary man in central Turkey picked up a sledgehammer to renovate his home. He knocked through a wall in his basement, expecting nothing more than dust and broken stone. Instead, cold air rushed out of the darkness. Behind that wall was a room no living person had set foot in for generations. And behind that room was another. And behind that one, a passage that dropped down into the earth, level after level, deeper than anyone in that town could have imagined. What this man had stumbled into was not a cellar. It was an entire city, carved out of solid rock, hidden beneath the ground, large enough to shelter 20,000 people. For nearly 5,000 years, we have been told a simple story about how ancient people lived. Small villages, mud huts, tools of copper and stone, simple lives lived above the ground in the light. But here is the problem. This buried city stretches roughly 85 meters down into the earth, nearly 280 feet, with as many as 18 levels stacked one beneath the other. It has more than 50 ventilation shafts, wells reaching down to hidden water, stables for animals, kitchens, storage rooms, chapels, and chambers that could be sealed from the inside by enormous rolling doors of stone. So who exactly built this? When did they build it? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, what were they so afraid of that they chose to live underground in the first place? Now, I am no conspiracy theorist, but the deeper you dig into the story of this place, the more the official explanation begins to crack. Because no one can agree on who carved the first chamber. No one can agree on how old it truly is. And to this day, more than half of it remains unexcavated, sealed off, unexplored, the deepest level still buried in darkness beneath the rock. Tonight, we are going down into the dark, into a place the locals call Derinkuyu, which in Turkish means deep well. And by the time we reach the bottom, you may find that everything you thought you knew about our ancient ancestors is far stranger and far older than mainstream history is willing to admit. So stay with me, because what lies beneath the surface of this one quiet Turkish town might just rewrite the story of human civilization itself. The basement door. Let us begin where the modern story begins, with that single wall in a quiet basement. The town sits in a region of central Anatolia known as Cappadocia, a landscape that looks like something from another world. Strange cone-shaped towers of soft stone, the famous fairy chimneys, rise out of the ground, sculpted over countless ages by wind and water. For generations, the people who lived here drew their water from deep wells, never once suspecting what those wells were passing through on the way down. They had heard the old stories, of course. Local legends spoke of tunnels beneath the earth, of hidden passages and forgotten rooms. But legends are easy to dismiss. Until one day in 1963, they stopped being legends. When that homeowner broke through his wall and found the first chamber, word spread quickly, and archaeologists arrived to begin exploring. What they uncovered left them genuinely stunned. This was not one room or even 10. It was a vast, interconnected complex, descending floor after floor into the bedrock. Staircases spiraled downward, tunnels branched off in every direction. Some passages were so narrow that a person had to crouch and move in single file, a design choice we will come back to because it matters far more than you might think. As the excavation continued, the scale of the place became almost impossible to believe. By the best estimates, this underground city could hold as many as 20,000 people, along with their livestock, their food stores, and everything they needed to survive, not for days, but for months at a time. Think about that for a moment. 20,000 people. That's the population of a small town, living entirely beneath the surface of the earth. And here's a detail that makes it even stranger. This place already had an ancient name, long before anyone called it Derinkuyu. The Greek-speaking people who once lived here called it Malakopia. It was abandoned, finally and completely, only in the early 20th century, when the Christian population of the region was forced to leave during the population exchange between Greece and Turkey in 1923. The people walked away, the doors went dark, and the city slipped back into silence, waiting 40 more years for a sledgehammer to find it again. But here is the part that should truly stop you in your tracks. Derinkuyu is not alone. Across the Cappadocia region, researchers have identified an astonishing number of underground settlements, by some counts, more than 200 of them, ranging from small hidden shelters to enormous multi-level cities. Some are said to be connected to one another by long tunnels running for miles through the rock. The city of Kaimakli sits only about 10 kilometers away, and according to local tradition, the two were once linked underground. One researcher who has spent years studying these sites, Roberto Bixio, founder of an Italian center dedicated to underground exploration, described Derinkuyu as a stone iceberg. What we see, he explained, is only a fraction of what lies hidden below, in some places 6 to 10 times deeper than the buildings that once stood above it. So the question is no longer simply, who built this one city? The question becomes something much larger and much harder to answer. Who built an entire underground world? And how on earth did we manage to forget it ever existed? A city beneath the earth. To understand the mystery, you first have to understand just how sophisticated this place really is. Because this was not a panicked hole dug in desperation. This was engineering. The builders carved everything from a soft volcanic rock called tuff, formed from ancient compacted ash. It is soft enough to cut and shape by hand, yet stable enough to hold its form for thousands of years without collapsing. That choice alone reveals knowledge, a deep understanding of the very ground they were working in, but it goes far beyond the choice of stone. Consider the air. When you bury a city 85 meters deep and fill it with 20,000 people, their animals, and their cooking fires, you face an immediate and deadly problem. How does anyone breathe? The builders solved it. They cut more than 50 ventilation shafts down through the complex, threading fresh air to every level. The largest of these shafts plunges around 55 meters into the rock, and it served two purposes at once, carrying air down to the people and reaching all the way to an underground water source so they could draw clean water without ever stepping into the daylight. An enemy above could lay siege for weeks, and they could not poison a well they could not even reach. And here is a detail that shows just how clever these people were. The passages were carved with subtle, deliberate slopes, so that the smoke from kitchens and torches would rise and drift away from the living areas instead of choking the people below. They thought about airflow. They thought about it underground by torchlight thousands of years ago. There is something else, too. Deep within the rock, the temperature in Derinkuyu stays almost perfectly constant all year round, somewhere around 13 degrees Celsius. Outside, the Cappadocian summers can climb toward 35 degrees and the winters can turn brutally cold. But down in the city, it is always mild, always livable. Whoever designed this knew exactly what they were doing. As you descend, the rooms reveal just how complete this hidden world truly was. There were stables for livestock, the walls still scarred with the rings where animals were tethered. There were presses for making wine and oil. There were cellars and storage rooms stocked for the long haul. There were communal kitchens blackened by ancient fires. There were chapels, and on the second level, a large room with a distinctive barrel-vaulted ceiling that many believe was a school. And far below, between the third and fourth levels, a great church carved in the shape of a cross, with tombs cut into the rock beside it. This was not a temporary shelter. This was a fully functioning society, built to sustain human life for an extended time completely cut off from the surface, which forces us straight back to the same haunting question. What kind of threat makes thousands of people abandon the sun and build an entire civilization in the dark? The stone doors. If you want to understand the fear that built this place, look at the doors. Throughout Derinkuyu, at key points along the tunnels, the builders carved enormous circular slabs of stone, shaped like great wheels, some weighing as much as half a ton. These rolling doors could be moved into place to seal off a passage completely. And here is the chilling detail. They were designed to be closed and locked from the inside. Think very carefully about what that means. A door locked from the inside is not built to keep your belongings safe while you are away. It is built to keep something out while you are still in there. And it gets stranger. Each level could be sealed off independently, one after another. So if an enemy somehow forced their way past the first door, the people could retreat deeper, roll the next stone into place behind them, and the next, drawing the intruder into a narrowing, twisting maze in total darkness. A maze the defenders knew by heart and the attacker did not. Now remember those narrow passages, the ones where you can only move in single file. Suddenly they make sense. An invading army, no matter how large or how well armed, would be funneled into the tunnels one person at a time, crouched, blind, and vulnerable, into the black, where the people who lived there were waiting. Every part of this city was engineered for one purpose above all others: survival, defense against an overwhelming threat. The mainstream explanation is that these defenses were built to protect against human invaders, the raiding armies that swept across Anatolia again and again over the centuries. And that may well be part of the truth. This region sat at a violent crossroads of empires fought over for thousands of years, but it still leaves the deepest question unanswered. Because building a few hidden rooms to wait out a raid is one thing. Carving a city 18 levels deep, capable of keeping 20,000 people alive for months, with its own air, its own water, and its own food, that is something else entirely. That is not hiding from a raid. That is preparing to outlast the end of the world. So before we go any deeper, I want to bring you into this. Because the most frustrating part of Derinkuyu, as you are about to see, is that the lowest, oldest, most secret levels, the ones most likely to hold the real answer, have never been fully opened. So if you believe the deepest chambers of this city should finally be explored, that we deserve to know what is down there, do me a favor right now and comment these two words: dig deeper. That is it. Dig deeper. I read every comment on this channel, and the more of us who say it, the louder this question becomes. And while you are down there in the comments, tell me your theory. Who or what do you think 20,000 people were so desperate to escape that they fled beneath the earth? I will be reading them, and I will reply to my favorites. Now let us keep descending, because the next part is where the official story starts to fall apart. Who built it and when? Here is where it truly begins to unravel. Ask the simple question, who built Derinkuyu? And you will not get a simple answer. You will get a debate that has never been settled. Some researchers believe the earliest tunnels reach back to the Hittite era, more than 3,000 years ago, when that ancient Anatolian power is thought to have used the region's soft rock for shelter. Others, and this is the more widely held view, credit the Phrygians, who likely carved the first true levels of the city around the 8th and 7th centuries before the Common Era. Then, many centuries later, during the Byzantine era, early Christians fleeing persecution expanded it dramatically, adding chapels that cross-shaped church and Greek inscriptions, and using its depths as a refuge during the long Arab-Byzantine wars, and again during later invasions. And here is something to sit with. The oldest written account that may describe these underground dwellings comes from a Greek soldier and writer named Xenophon, roughly 2,400 years ago. He wrote of people in this part of the world living in homes dug down into the earth large enough for families and their animals alike, entered from above. So even by his time, this was already an old and established way of life. But notice what no one can actually tell you. No one can tell you with certainty the date the very first chamber was carved. No one can tell you the name of the people who first looked at solid rock and decided to build a world beneath it. The dates we are given are estimates, educated guesses, ranges that stretch across many centuries and many different peoples. Each new group that moved in carved over the work of the last until the original layers became almost impossible to date at all. And that uncertainty is exactly why this site deserves far more serious, independent investigation than it has received. Because the official timeline rests on assumptions, not on hard, settled proof. When a structure has no inscription clearly stating who built it and when its origin is pieced together from scattered clues and best guesses, we should be honest about that. We do not fully know. And in archaeology, what we do not know is so often exactly where the real story is hiding. They have been wrong. Before at this point, you might be thinking, surely mainstream archaeology has the broad strokes right. Surely the experts know more than they are letting on. But history teaches us to be very careful with that assumption, because the experts have been wrong before, spectacularly, embarrassingly wrong. And in this very part of the world, travel a few hundred miles across Turkey and you arrive at a place called Göbekli Tepe. When it was first studied, mainstream archaeology was certain it understood the ancient past. The accepted story was simple. 12,000 years ago, humans were nothing more than scattered hunter-gatherers, wandering in small bands, incapable of organized religion, incapable of monumental construction, incapable of anything resembling civilization. Then, Göbekli Tepe came out of the ground. Massive carved stone pillars arranged in deliberate circles decorated with intricate images of animals built by people who, according to every textbook of the time, should not have been able to build anything at all. Its oldest layers date back roughly 11,600 years. That makes it thousands of years older than Stonehenge, thousands of years older than the pyramids. It existed at a moment in history when, by the accepted account, it was flatly impossible. And nearby, a related site called Karahan Tepe has only deepened the mystery, revealing more sophisticated carving and construction from the very same astonishingly early period. Göbekli Tepe did not just adjust the timeline of human civilization. It shattered it. It forced archaeologists around the entire world to admit that organized, capable, sophisticated human societies existed far earlier than they had ever been willing to believe. And here's the part worth remembering. When sites like this first surfaced, many experts dismissed them. They underestimated the age. They underestimated the people. They were wrong. So now ask yourself, honestly, if mainstream archaeology could be that wrong about Göbekli Tepe, sitting in the very same country, how confident should we really be about the official story of Derinkuyu? If human beings were shaping monumental stone structures 12,000 years ago just over the horizon, is it truly so unreasonable to ask whether the underground cities of Cappadocia might be older than we have been told? This is not about wild fantasy. This is about following the same pattern that history has shown us again and again. The pattern in which a groundbreaking discovery is first dismissed, then doubted, and finally reluctantly accepted as the thing that rewrites the human story. What were they running from? Now we come to the strangest possibility of all, and I want to be very clear with you here. What I am about to share is a theory. It is not proven fact. It is an open question, the kind that deserves careful, honest investigation rather than being mocked and dismissed out of hand. We keep returning to that one haunting detail. This was a city built to survive for a long time underground, completely sealed off from the surface. Defenses against raiders explain part of it, but they do not fully explain the sheer scale of the thing, the depth, the self-sufficiency. The air, the water, the food, all engineered to keep thousands of people alive for an extended stretch of time away from the world above. So some researchers have asked a bolder question. What if the threat was not only other people? What if, at some point in the distant past, the danger came from the sky or from the earth itself? Across nearly every ancient culture on the planet, from Mesopotamia to the Americas to the myths of peoples who never once met, we find the same deep memory repeating. Stories of a time of catastrophe, great floods, fire falling from above, skies that turned to darkness, a world nearly wiped clean, forcing the survivors to hide, to endure, and to begin again. And geologists have identified a real window in our planet's history that lines up with those memories. Roughly 12,000 years ago, around the end of the last ice age, in a period known as the Younger Dryas, the climate of the Earth changed with shocking speed and violence. Some researchers, building on the work of writers like Graham Hancock, proposed that a global catastrophe struck the world at the close of the Ice Age, devastating an early and advanced human society whose memory now survives only in myth. Now, mainstream science is cautious about these ideas, and that caution is entirely reasonable. We should demand evidence, but we should also be willing to ask the questions, because the timing keeps echoing across so many different fields at once. The same 12,000-year mark that appears at Göbekli Tepe, the same window of global upheaval the geologists describe, the same era preserved in the flood myths of cultures scattered across the globe. Could a place like Derinkuyu, or at least its earliest, deepest, oldest levels, the ones we still have not fully excavated, trace back to people who lived through something like that? People who learned, in the most terrible way imaginable, that the surface of the earth was not always a safe place to be? I am not telling you this is the answer. I am telling you it is a question worth investigating honestly, instead of dismissing it, the same way experts once dismissed Göbekli Tepe, the sealed levels. And that brings us to perhaps the most maddening part of this entire mystery. We still have not seen the bottom. Despite decades of study, large portions of Derinkuyu remain unexcavated to this day. Of its estimated 18 levels, only about 8 are open to the public. By some accounts, only a small fraction of the full city has ever been properly explored at all. The rest is partially blocked, sealed off, or simply closed, the deepest reaches still buried in rock and shadow, the deepest levels, the oldest levels, the ones most likely to hold the real secret of who first carved this place and why, remain just out of reach. And this is the pattern we see again and again at the world's most important ancient sites, the most tantalizing chambers, the ones that could finally answer our questions, are so often the very ones that stay closed. And remember, Derinkuyu is only one of them. As recently as 2015, during a construction project beneath a hilltop castle in the nearby city of Nevşehir, workers uncovered what may be an even larger underground city, possibly stretching more than 100 meters deep. An entire hidden metropolis sitting beneath a modern town, completely unknown until a bulldozer happened to find it. How many more are still down there, unmapped, unentered, waiting? Now, the official reasons for not digging deeper are reasonable enough on the surface. Structural instability, safety concerns, the genuine danger and difficulty of excavating ancient rock. And those concerns may be perfectly valid. But you have to admit, there is something deeply unsatisfying about it. We have a city that could rewrite our understanding of the ancient world. We have engineering that challenges what we believe early humans were capable of. We have a dating mystery that no one can resolve. And yet, the deepest answers stay sealed beneath our feet, waiting. So perhaps the question we should be asking loudly and persistently is the simplest one of all. Why not dig deeper? Why not bring the best technology we have, ground-penetrating radar, careful modern excavation, every tool available, and finally see what lies at the very bottom of Derinkuyu. Because until we do, the truth remains exactly where it has been for thousands of years, buried in the dark, just out of sight. Conclusion. So let us stand back and look at everything we have uncovered tonight. A city carved as many as 18 levels deep into solid rock, large enough to shelter 20,000 people, with its own air, its own water, and its own food. Stone doors that lock from the inside, built against a threat we still cannot name. A dating mystery that no expert can truly settle, with no clear record of who carved the very first chamber. A nearby site, Göbekli Tepe, that already proved mainstream archaeology can be catastrophically wrong about the age of human achievement in this exact part of the world. And a haunting echo across cultures and across sciences of some great catastrophe 12,000 years ago that may have driven our ancestors underground. When you put it all together, the comfortable official story that this was simply a clever hiding place built up gradually over a few centuries starts to feel incomplete. Not necessarily false, but incomplete, like a book with its most important chapters torn out and lost. Maybe the answer is exactly what we have been told. Maybe ancient people, fearing very human enemies, simply built an extraordinary refuge, and we are reading too much into it. Or maybe, just maybe, the deepest levels of Derinkuyu hold the memory of something far older and far stranger than we have ever been willing to accept. A memory of a time when the world above became something to fear, and the only way to survive was to go down into the dark. Until we finally open those sealed chambers and explore all the way to the bottom, we may never know for certain. But the questions are real. The mystery is real. And it is still down there, right now, beneath a quiet town in Turkey, waiting for someone brave enough and curious enough to seek the truth. So what do you think they were hiding from? If you have not already, drop it in the comments, dig deeper, and tell me your theory. I will be reading and replying to my favorites. And if you enjoy descending into this mystery with me, make sure you subscribe, because we are only just getting started. From lost cities to forgotten civilizations and the countless secrets still buried beneath our feet, there is so much more to explore. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me as we keep digging into the mysteries our history has left behind. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, stay curious.